I am honored to have our next guest with us. As many of you are aware, I have focused on what the deep state has attempted to do to someone who I consider one of the bravest patriots, most courageous patriots that our country has ever produced, and that is General Michael Flynn. He, his wife, his family have fought the deep state in hand-to-hand combat. And without their fight, I believe that the deep state's agenda of removing a duly elected president of the United States would have been accomplished. I'm honored to have with me a spokesperson for the Mike Flynn Defense Fund. I encourage you to donate. I believe it's not only supporting General Flynn in his defense against the deep state, but it's actually protecting your freedom as well. If they take General Flynn down, they not only take President Trump down, they take our entire country down. And they take your freedoms and liberties down. Mike Flynn Legal Defense Fund, MikeFlynnDefenseFund.org. It's my honor to have with me General Flynn's brother, Joe. We've had Barbara, General Flynn's sister, Barbara Redgate, on our show several times. And it's my honor to introduce to you Joe Flynn, who is not only the spokesperson for the Mike Flynn Defense Fund, but he in his own right is an independent business executive and entrepreneur based on Florida's Gulf Coast. He recently retired as president and CEO of Veresco, a Southern California-based healthcare IT services company. Joe, welcome to the Operation Freedom Show.
Dave, thank you very much for having me. And I just want to say this to you and to all your listeners out there on this National Day of Prayer, that you are all in our prayers. Your health is in our prayers, as is the health of the nation. And Dave, I want to thank you for your incredible support of our journey here, of our fight, and of the Mike Flynn Legal Defense Fund. You've just been an amazing supporter to us, and we cannot thank you enough. And God bless you, and God bless all your listeners.
Well, thank you, Joe. And Joe, you know, it's a very easy thing to do. What has happened to your brother, General Flynn, to you, to your entire family, I don't know of any other family that could have weathered this storm that was directed by the deep state in order to, if you will, send our country into an even deeper state of chaos than it is. You know, Joe, when you looked back over the past 3 years, educate our listeners, because the bought-off lamestream fake media doesn't touch on any of this. Educate our listeners on the pertinent dates and events on those dates that were fabricated and implemented by the deep state to target General Flynn.
Dave, I think it goes way back. I actually think it goes back to even when he was in uniform, while he was the head of the DIA. You know, Leon Panetta had recommended to the President Obama to appoint General Flynn as the head of the DIA because he needed somebody who was going to go in there and shake the place up. He was told to go in and shake the place up because the DIA was operating as if we were still fighting a war with the Soviet Union. It was not set up to fight insurgencies and wars that we were fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq. And so the person to send in was Mike Flynn. Mike Flynn goes in there and begins to shake things up and begins to really push hard at getting the DIA to be a functional organization for the warfighter. And in that endeavor, it discovers the weaponization of the intelligence community under the Obama administration, and really, really rails against that. And thus he was retired early from his job. He was asked to leave, and like a good soldier, he went out. But shortly after that, he realized in coming out of his job at the DIA that things had changed pretty rapidly under the Obama administration, and he was not going to be quiet about it. He was very concerned about what he saw specifically in the intelligence community, and began to openly criticize it, and because he felt it was just a real serious problem. Then, of course, the campaign of 2016 comes in, and many people were consulting with him or wanted him to consult with them, Ted Cruz, Carly Fiorina. But, of course, he meets the Trump family, and he meets Donald Trump in particular, and their worldview in the spring of 2016 really melded together, and they became very close. They became good friends to the point where President Trump considered General Flynn for vice president at one point. He was on the short list. This is when the targeting, so the Obama administration, the deep state, began targeting him really in that late 2015, 2016 timeframe when he was very vocal, particularly against the Iran deal and against the Iraq deal, or what was going on with the Iraqi war. He joins the Trump campaign, and immediately the media, the deep state, start a smear campaign. Immediately, they open up Crossfire Hurricane, and my personal opinion is Crossfire Hurricane was opened up primarily to target General Flynn. Carter Page, George Papadopoulos, both good guys. They weren't really the target. Let's be straight, Dave. Mm-hmm, what do you think?
I agree with you. I think that whole discussion about the insurance policy, I believe and people have disagreed with me, but I truly believe, Joe, the insurance policy was taking out General Flynn.
Well, let's look at the facts around that. I think you're 100% right. Let's look at the facts around that. Shortly after they launched Crossfire Hurricane in July of 2016, they get the FISA warrants against Carter Page, okay, and then they go in and they brief the incoming or the president elect, the campaign, and of course they go in and they brief General Flynn and they brief Donald Trump, and they're wired. The FBI's wired in there, and they want to observe both Trump and Flynn, but mostly Flynn, because they thought to themselves, at some point we got an investigation against this guy. At some point we're going to get him, and we're going to need to know who we're up against here and what kind of person this is. So they're spying on him early on. Then Trump wins the election in 2016 in November, and General Flynn is named National Security Advisor. And who does Obama tell Trump to not hire? There's only one person he brings up in that whole thing. It wasn't Chris Christie. It wasn't Ted Cruz. It wasn't some politician. It was Michael Flynn. Imagine that. So they were following him. They're tracking him. And then, of course, Sally Yates. And then, of course, the ambush interview takes place. Okay? And they lose the election. They do the ambush interview. Now they do it without warning. They do it without allowing his Miranda rights. They tell him, we're just going to come in for a routine conversation.
Don't have a lawyer. Don't have a lawyer. No.
Oh, no. In fact, when Andy McCabe called General Flynn and said, I'm going to send a couple of guys over, we have some routine security questions, he didn't say, we're going to talk about the conversation you had with the Russian ambassador. So these two guys, Mike thinks they're part of the team and thinks they're going to talk about national security issues because these guys are with the counterterrorism group of the FBI. So he's thinking he's part of the team. And even when they leave, he doesn't think anything of the conversation he has with them. Okay? Sally Yates comes running over to the White House with her hair on fire saying Mike Flynn might be compromised because of the Logan Act, which nobody had ever heard of before. Right?
Right.
So then the press, of course, teams up with the Democrats in the deep state and leaks out the conversation. David Ignatius from the Washington Post leaks out the conversation that he has with Ambassador Kislyak, which, by the way, was perfectly legitimate.
Absolutely.
Fine.
He was the incoming national security advisor to the president-elect. This has happened umpteen times.
If he wasn't having conversations, particularly with the Russian ambassador, then you'd think he wasn't doing his job.
It would be a dereliction of duty.
It would be a dereliction of duty.
Because Obama had already set a little flare over toward Russia, getting them wound up about throwing people out of the country, right? General Flynn, if anybody, saved us from jumping into a world war.
isn't it amazing that Obama launches all of these sanctions against the Russians because of their supposed interference in our election? But during the election, when he knew about it, he did nothing to them.
Well, he even said it's not an issue. No.
It's not an issue. So let's get back to this insurance policy thing. So now they put General Flynn in an impossible situation with his boss, the President of the United States, where he's in the press every day, Russia, Flynn, Russia. And finally, General Flynn falls on his sword, goes into the President and says, "Sir, I don't want to be a distraction to you anymore. I'm going to submit my resignation so that you can move on with your presidency and get to the nation's business." Not something he wanted to do, but something he did because he did not feel he wanted to be a distraction to the president anymore. Shortly thereafter, what happened? Trump, in a one-on-one meeting with Comey, says to Comey, "Hey, see to it. Let's see if you can go easy on Flynn. He's a good guy." He doesn't say, "You must go easy on Flynn. I order you to go easy on Flynn." He says, "Hey, maybe you can go easy on him. The guy's a good guy. He served his country for 33 years. He's a three-star general. He's a stand-up guy." Comey agrees with President Trump, according to Comey, and then goes out and writes a memo, leaks that memo to one of his friends, who then puts it into the New York Times. And boom, 2 weeks later, Robert Mueller is named. Rod Rosenstein names Robert Mueller special counsel, and they're going to investigate the Russia collusion, the Trump campaign's Russia collusion. Thinking right there and then, before that, they're talking about the 25th Amendment, but right there and then, you know what, if we're not going to get Trump with the 25th Amendment, you know what, we'll do this special counsel. We'll nail him on Russia collusion. We know it's there, or we think it's there. And if we don't nail him on Russia collusion, then we'll get him on obstruction of justice because he told Comey, "Hey, go easy on Flynn." That's the insurance policy. They thought they had Trump lock, stock, and barrel right there with that memo and right with the announcement of that special counsel, which, of course, as you know, Dave, completely blew up in their face.
Folks, we're speaking with Joe Flynn. I encourage you to go to MikeFlynnDefenseFund.org, MikeFlynnDefenseFund.org. You know, Joe, and then as they kept putting the pressure on General Flynn, and they thought, and here's where they absolutely did not understand what his inner core was, or your family's core. They thought if they put enough pressure on him and on your family, that he would give them whatever they wanted as far as make up whatever it was to save his own can so that they could take President Trump down.
That's right. Now, and what he prior to the guilty plea, he had been telling them all along, "I don't have any information about Russia about the campaign colluding with the Russians. I will give you," and he did give them everything that they wanted, and he could have given them he would have given them whatever they needed. He would have spent the amount of time that they needed to do their investigation because he had nothing to hide. They didn't have to force him into a plea deal. They forced him into a plea deal for one reason only. They wanted a scalp, and his was the biggest scalp. So they're going to do everything they can to suppress information from his weak legal team that he had prior. They're going to suppress information. They're going to threaten to indict his son over nonsensical issues which were thrown out in the Eastern District of Virginia eventually. Okay? And we're going to bankrupt you. And we're going to give you the Manafort treatment. We're going to throw you in solitary confinement. And guess what? When he pled guilty, they thought that, you know what, we got Flynn, he's pled guilty. Within 2 weeks, we're going to have paddy wagons sent over to the White House, and we're going to arrest half of those people because they're all a bunch of colluders with Russians and traitors. Nothing happened. Zilch happened. Not one person got indicted based on, or even into any kind of trouble based on the 90 hours of excruciating interviews that General Flynn did with the Mueller investigation. Nothing happened because there was nothing to be given. But they went after him. They buried him. They talk about collusion. They colluded with the mainstream media and tried to destroy his character and destroy his reputation. And you know what? He finally had enough of it. After going in front of the judge last year, December 18th, where all kinds of crazy things were talked about in the courtroom, we decided to change our tack legally and fight this, because guess what? They broke their agreement.
Mm-hmm.
They broke their agreement with us. So you know what? If they're not going to play right, play nice, do the right thing, and see justice through, we're going to put a fighter on our team. And that's when we hired Sidney Powell. We said, screw it. We're going to fight this thing to the end. We're going to fight it to the end.
And Joe, that changed the entire situation.
It sure did.
Because Joe, you were very kind when you described General Flynn's previous legal team from Covington as being weak. In fact, in reading through the documents that Sidney Powell has put forward, and I consider myself a friend to Sidney, and I'm a friend that, my friends will tell you, if I'm kind of hard on my friends. The information she has put forward has been nothing short of brilliant and eye-opening. And in fact, when you look at those documents that have been put forward, his previous legal counsel threw General Flynn under the bus and set him up.
I have to be careful, Dave.
I know you do, but this
particular issue is very sensitive, as you can imagine.
Yes, but when I look at it, I have grave concerns. Yeah. And when you read General Flynn's personal statement that he submitted to the court, he speaks about the fact that he asked those previous attorneys, before he signed his plea agreement, that he, quote, had lied to the FBI. Please go out and call the FBI and please tell me if they really believe I lied to them. Right. And when his previous attorneys did that, they were told that those people who interviewed him, Strzok and another guy by the name of Pienka, well, their impression was that he was of sure demeanor, did not lie. But when those attorneys walked back in before General Flynn signed that plea deal, in reading through General Flynn's statement that he submitted to the court, his previous attorneys told him, "Oh yeah, they think you lied."
Yes,
Joe, that's it's incomprehensible to me that legal representation would do that to their own client.
Well, and the only way we found this out is to hire much better legal representation, who has dug deeper than I think any lawyer has ever dug for any client that I've ever seen, certainly in high-profile cases like this one. If we didn't hire Sidney Powell, there is so much information that we would have never found out. And quite frankly, if we didn't punt in December of 2018 and get out of that courtroom before Judge Sullivan would have made a decision, he would have been. General Flynn might be in prison right now as we're speaking.
He would be, because I believe he would. Joe, I truly believe that he would have been in prison if he hadn't said, "Stop, we have to have a timeout." And then his previous attorneys were fired, and Sidney was brought in.
Right, that's exactly right. We knew we had to get to the truth, and General Flynn said, I'm glad you brought up his affidavit, and I encourage people to read it.
Yeah, they must.
I encourage people to read it.
Well, I did a YouTube on it, Joe. I read his.
I know, you read the whole thing.
And you know what? And I'll tell you what fries me, Joe.
Yeah.
I've never seen that affidavit read in the bought-off lamestream fake media. I've never heard it read, even a portion of it, on Fox. I've never heard it on another YouTube channel or alternative media outlet. I mean, and it is the smoking gun.
No, and it is, and here's the most monumental, consequential case of the entire Trump presidency, of the entire Russia collusion, of the entire battle that the president is having against the deep state. And here it is in plain sight, General Flynn explaining in excruciating detail what happened to him, in excruciating detail about the fact that he never committed any crimes, and not a peep from the media. Not a peep. Not a peep. It's astounding.
And all these people that put themselves out as freedom warriors and I know I'm picking on Fox, But all these people that put themselves out as these great freedom warriors, all their, they haven't written an article about it. They haven't talked about it on the big shows. Nothing.
Yeah, it's disappointing. It's disappointing. I will say, some of those individuals have been very supportive of us, and I have to thank them.
I know. This is not you. This is not you talking. It's me. It's me talking. But I don't want to burn any bridges for you guys. But boy, I'll tell you, it really fries me because that one document takes this whole thing and makes it go away.
Well, and that's the reason why the media didn't, at least the left-wing media. The left-wing media didn't report on it at all. Not one thing, because he finally told them the truth about everything. Remember, they were saying Michael Flynn, hasn't spoken in 3 years. Well, he did spoke. He spoke pretty loudly in that affidavit. Couldn't be any louder about his innocence and about how he got screwed by the system and his former legal team not doing the job that they should have done. And now he's fighting for his life. Okay, and government is not cooperating. The government is not providing the information that his lawyer is asking. I mean, it's pretty basic exculpatory information that he's asking for. That the government is, in many cases, saying they don't have the documents. They've lost the documents. It's outrageous.
I recently had former FBI official who'd been in the FBI for 33 years, Buck Revell, on. I interviewed him. I know you saw that
I heard the interview.
And I asked him, how often has a 302 form, which is the form they fill out after they interview somebody, how often, in your experience, in your 33 years with the, has that been lost, especially in a high-profile case? And he's like, I've never heard of that. Never. I've never heard of that.
Of course. And, the problem is so much time has gone by, right?
Yeah. Well,
so everyone's distracted by lots of other different things. This was an attempt to bring down a duly elected president by going after one of his closest allies and trying to destroy that person's life, livelihood, and family. Okay, and they did it. They made a massive attempt, but I got to tell you, we're not going to be destroyed by these people. We're going to win this battle, one way or the other. We're going to win this battle.